All right, time to call the January 9th meeting of the Williamson County Commissioner Board to order. I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and a good holiday season. I want to remind everybody to please silence their cell phones during the duration of the meeting. I want to thank the sheriff and the sheriff's deputies for being here tonight. We always appreciate that. The first item on our agenda is the invocation and pledge given tonight by District 3. The invocation to be given by Commissioner Jeff Graves, the pledge to be given by Commissioner Jennifer Mason. If you will, please rise for the invocation and pledge.
If you would, pray with me. Our Father, we are grateful that we can come together tonight and that we can discuss the business that has been put before us. We thank you that we live in a country where we can gather without fear of reprisal, and we can make decisions, Father, to better our community. And we are thankful just for our health and for your provision and care for our cities and our counties and our nation. And we just pray and thank you for our law enforcement and public safety. God, thank you that they're willing to sacrifice themselves and that their families give of them to keep us safe. And we just pray your safety and protection over them. We just pray that tonight we would carry ourselves in a manner that honors you and that our conversation would bring glory to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have roll call. If everyone will sign in to their meetings app if they haven't already. While you're doing that, I would like to welcome a new commissioner, Commissioner Richards, first night on the job tonight. Thank you for being here. And then just so everyone knows, we have Commissioner Sturgeon live via satellite, WebEx, something we've not done before. But we were glad to be able to accommodate her as she goes through some health issues. So she's here. That's what we were testing a little bit before we started. If everything works well, she'll be joining us through WebEx, be able to vote and talk. And again, we hope that all works out throughout the entire meeting. All right, if everyone has logged into their meetings app, please press your present button. Record the roll, please, Mr. Whidbey.
24 present.
Everyone's here. Next, we have approval of the minutes. Those were emailed out to all the commissioners. I'll entertain a motion. Proper motion from Commissioner Torres, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Any discussion on the minutes? And that was Commissioner Steve Smith on the second. If there are no discussion, then we are all ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Anyone opposed, your no button. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whidbey.
24 yes, 0 no.
Minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is citizen communications. We have 11 citizens who have asked to sign up or have signed up and asking to speak. We're going to divide that up. We're going to give everyone 3 minutes. Easier to divide. And if you would, when you come to the podium, state your name. And I will call these in order. First up is Bill Petty.
Having me. You'll be happy to hear I'm going to take less than 3 minutes. So I'm here to talk about the voting machines, and I know it's not on your agenda this evening, but I also realize that the Election Commission is going to be submitting their 2023 budget to you very soon. So I thought this would be a good time to talk about the machines. You are the deliberative body that's fiduciary responsible for our spending our tax dollars wisely, and I'm sure that's something you take very seriously. And with regards to that, let's talk about some of the expenses that we've had on voting machines the last few years. Last year, in 2022, we rented the ES&S equipment for $800,000. We paid Dominion Systems $1.5 million in 2019. So we have, over the last 3 years, we have spent in excess of $2.2 million in voting machines. And one question I have is, what's happened to the Dominion Systems? I understand that they're not being used, and they might even go on eBay. Might look good in my living room. Now, our election commission, they want to pay for the ES&S machines this year, and that would bring more costs to run them every year in excess of $100,000. With the current recession and the huge Williamson County debt hanging over us, why are we in such a hurry to continue to pay for election machines that have been shown to be unreliable, easily hacked, and lacking in transparency? I ask that you hold off any new expenditures on machines for the next year and conduct a proper due diligence with the help of experts in the field. Actually, what I'd really like to see is to get rid of the machines completely and go back to paper ballots that are cast and counted in precincts. That's all I have to say, and I thank you for your time.
Next on the list, we have Karen Cochran. And again, when you come to the podium, if you would please state your name.
Happy New Year, y'all. My name is Karen Cochran. I am speaking to you tonight about the need to pass a tax resolution for historic properties. I own the Five Points building, which is at the corner of Fifth Avenue and Main Street. We put the Noel sign up during the holidays. You might be familiar with that. I've owned the Five Points building since 1982, and my tenants have historically been local businesses with the exception of Starbucks. They became a tenant of mine in 2000. Now all of us in downtown are beginning to really enjoy a combination of local businesses and some national ones, which the tourists and our local citizens seem to really love. But at the end of 2020, I got my real estate taxes, and they had increased from $24,000 a year to $57,000 a year. So my husband and I went down to the Williamson County Property Assessor's office, and they shared some of the following information. And if any of you want detailed about this, I'm happy to email it to you. 42 properties in Franklin got new appraisals that totaled $127 million, or an increase of $85 million. Real estate taxes for those same 42 properties therefore increased almost $840,000 per year. For me, absorbing a $33,000 unexpected increase in the expenses in 1 year is tough, and knowing that it'll be a part of my cost going forward and my basis is even tougher. This significant increase in cost will be for all of the 42 property owners going forward, on a going forward basis. This doesn't account for any of the expenses that us as historic property owners really wind up spending every year just keeping an old historic property updated and properly taken care of. In the early 90s, Franklin developed a streetscape program, which many of you know well about, which was really a special assessment, a special tax assessment
20
over
more
about
seconds.
10 years. Excuse me?
20 more seconds.
Okay. Anyway, I'm supporting this resolution. I support this resolution, and I really like it because it provides local governments to craft local tax relief programs for historic commercial properties. Thank you all very much.
Next, we have Frank Limpus.
Good evening. I'm Frank Limpus. I'm with a group called Tennessee Voters for Election Integrity. which has been researching voting machines and voting processes in Williamson County and Tennessee now for a couple of years. We've also spent days witnessing elections and the audits as well, and the recounts of October 2021 and on. Next month, Williamson County Election Commission is probably going to bring their budget for the next year before you. And we'd like you to strongly consider maybe even rejecting that budget or at least looking deeply into it. They want to move us from renting voting machines to owning them. And and they want to do this with a new contract with maybe a new vendor, maybe the existing vendor. Don't know. That's not been decided yet. We strongly suspect that the Commission will not have considered other voting options that are out there that are very good, that are very transparent, that are much cheaper than what they're going to be considering. And we think they need to also bring in some experts in purchasing and in technology to look into the equipment deeply, because there are a lot of concerns with the equipment that we have documented. In our judgment, their increased budget requests will continue to broaden the risk to citizens of our current election system, and the system is indeed quite risky. The Commission has spent more than $2.2 million in the last 40 months on voting equipment and related costs. It has further expanded their budget. Some of that money has come from Help America Act, Vote Act, HAVA, to help buy some of the machines. That's true. But all of that is taxpayer money. We all basically paid for that regardless where it came from. Our concerns are documented and plentiful. The computerized voting machines are vulnerable to sabotage and cyber attacks that can change votes. Machines like the ballot marking devices cause problems, not solve them. These machines, the machine vendors refuse to be transparent. And I have personal experience with that in asking the ES&S people questions or trying to ask questions of these machines to which they would not answer. The machine certification process is weak at best, and the Tennessee State Election Commission doesn't check these machines as they come into Tennessee, nor do they protect citizens from what these machines can do to us. There are more concerns. Won't bother with them with you now, but we have plenty of them.
20 seconds.
Thank you. We would prefer basically removing them and going to paper ballots, but I think a good interim idea is to have them, rather than to go to a year contract or whatever contract they would go to purchase these machines, let's do a 6 months contract and study these machines much deeper than they are being studied now. I'm happy to present to you all the research that we have done and can give you all of the background on what has led us to this belief. I do appreciate your time, though, very much. Thank you.
Next up is Sharon Spiegel.
My name is Sharon Spiegel, and I am here to give you some observations about how our elections are administered pertaining to the long lines that we all experienced this past year. I served as a poll watcher during all 3 elections of 2022. At Hunters Bend Elementary on primary election day, August 4th, there were 8 ballot marking devices and 2 scanners at 4:30 p.m. with a line that snaked back and forth 6 times inside the gymnasium and went out into the parking lot. At 5:30, 2 men from the Election Commission arrived with 2 more ballot marking devices, making the total 10. The election official confirmed with voters at the head of the line the wait was 1 hour and had been the majority of the day. There was a line of 6 to 8 voters who had cleared registration, holding their thermal ballot and application to vote before the ballot marking devices, and this line had plenty of time to review the pre-printed plastic enclosed list of judges on the ballot before ever entering the voting booth. The holdup was the ballot marking devices. On Election Day, November 8th, I poll watched at Cool Springs Conference Center at the Marriott Hotel. At 7:15 a.m., there was a long line waiting for 5 registration computers, 9 ballot marking devices, and 2 scanners. Because of the configuration of the room, there was a poll worker at the door to control access to the room because only a few people could be in line after the registration waiting on a ballot marking device. But they had time to review, again, the pre-printed, plastic-enclosed copies of the amendments, which were going to be on the November ballot on the ballot marking device. At 8:45, I confirmed with the election official the line was 1+ hours, snaking multiple times inside the conference center hall and out onto the outside sidewalk all the way back to the entrance of the Marriott. On November 8th that evening, I poll watched at Church of the City beginning at 4 p.m., where there was a line with 25 to 35 voters snaking several times after the voter had already been through registration. Before registration, the line continued outside into the parking lot about a quarter of a mile around the back of the church. I confirmed with the election official the line was 1 to 1.5 hours long, and he said it had been that way all day long. I observed 6 registration computers, 10 ballot marking devices, and 2 scanners. At 6 o'clock, the election official confirmed the wait was over 2 hours to vote and continued to have 30 to 35 people in line inside after registration who had plenty of time to read the copies of the amendments with which the election official handed them prior to voting while they were waiting in the line. The ballot marking devices were the holdup in voting once again. The 2-hour wait continued until closing, where the last voter voted at 8:25 p.m.
20 seconds.
2-hour wait times like Arizona without the machine malfunctions. I cannot know how many people left that day who were disenfranchised and didn't vote because they saw the links of those terrible lines in these places. So what would happen if there were storms or lightning or weather? Because there's no protection for the voters outside at these locations whatsoever. I would
Thank
like
you.
this commission to consider allowing us, please, to vote on a watermarked, counterfeit-proof, secure, random, serialized, hand-marked paper ballot. We can set up vastly more cardboard voting booths than we can afford more
Thank
voting
you, Ms.
machines.
Spiegel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Elise Farrell.
Good evening. My name is Elise Farrell, and my experience as a poll watcher is very similar to the last person who spoke, only I was at different locations. My own experience as a voter was I was in line for an hour. After I got through the line, I tried to get onto my machine to put a write-in candidate. I couldn't do it. Took me 4 tries and a poll worker to help me fix the machine to get my write-in candidate to work. You know, so it's like I'm sitting here thinking, if everybody had that much problem doing their voting, then those lines would be way longer, and that's what's causing the problem. Where I came from before I moved here, which has been a while, but when I came from there, I voted for over 40 years. Most of the time on paper ballots, in places way more populated than here. You know, I came from LA County. Sorry, guys, way more populated. But we had precinct voting and paper ballots, and we never had a long line, ever. So it's pretty clear to me, having moved here and dealing with what we're dealing with now, that that's the cause of the problem. Without even talking about the reliability of the machines, without even talking about that. So I'm like them. I want to go back to paper ballots. So I'm hoping you guys will reconsider buying a bunch of machines that don't work very well anyway and cost a lot of money. So please consider it. Appreciate it.
Heidi Hood.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Heidi, and I serve as the Managing Director of the Downtown Franklin Association, a division of the Heritage Foundation. I have the privilege of advocating for the economic vitality and preservation of our historic district. Today presents an opportunity that could benefit both downtown Franklin and the rest of the county and the state of Tennessee by creating the option for another tool in the belt of local government to protect and preserve its historic districts. Since 1984, DFA has spearheaded the revitalization of Franklin's historic downtown, working in partnership with property and business owners, local government, and the Heritage Foundation. We've created one of America's greatest Main Street success stories. Main Street has earned national recognition, reminding locals and visitors alike of a simpler time in history where community matters. This success has brought tourists from all over the world and even serves as a deciding factor for new residents choosing Williamson County to build their lives and do business. The benefits across the county are evident, especially when considering that every household saves just over $1,100 in annual taxes due to tourism, of which downtown Franklin's historic district is the primary driver for the county. While this initial success is amazing, the continued success and benefits are not guaranteed. In 2020, the world shut down and small businesses suffered greatly. In 2021, properties were reassessed, raising property taxes by 200 to 300% for downtown Franklin. These property taxes are passed down to tenants through triple net lease agreements. In the same way, any property tax savings resulting from this resolution would legally be required to pass down to tenants as well through the same lease agreements. The health and survival of the small businesses that make our downtown the unique destination it is today could depend on this. If our historic district were overrun by chains, offices, or vacancies, what message would Williamson County be sending the rest of Tennessee and America regarding the long-term rewards of revitalizing a historic district? With the rising property taxes, inflation, hiring challenges, and additional maintenance costs that historic properties require, are we creating an environment that will drive out the stakeholders that made downtown the resource to the county that it is today? Is there a way we can support the continued success of this district and others throughout the state by considering this resolution? Thank you.
Roseanne Jackson.
Thank you. My name is Roseanne Jackson, and I think Heidi said everything I wanted to say. My husband and I own a building in downtown Franklin. We have 338 and 340 Main Street, and I own the Iron Gate and occupy one of the spaces. I have to say the tax hit was very shocking, and as a small retailer and a retailer who's been in business in Franklin since 1996, I have seen it grow, change, become the incredible place that it is today. And I know what hardship it is on small businesses. They want to be able to pay their employees well, offer retirement plans and incentives, and when you're just hit so hard with your rent being so high, it makes it very difficult. And I know we all love Franklin for how special it is and how the individual retailers, and nothing against big chains, but it's the small retailers that have their heart and soul in it and make it a really great special place. And so my husband and I are in support of the tax resolution. Thank you.
Valerie Williams.
Hello, I'm Valerie Williams. I live in Brentwood. I know your agenda is not on the topic of the voting machines, but I have another comment on that. I am concerned about the size of the precincts and the number of precincts that have been changed since the redistricting. It disenfranchises voters when you have some of the problems like what Sharon had talked about. Voters are disenfranchised, and that seems like it breaks our constitutional oath to allow us all to vote. The county has grown from 183,000 residents in 2010 to about 248,000 in 2020. That's 35% growth, 64,000 people. Voters in that group are about 75% of that population. So voters approximately are now at 248,000 when they were at 137,000 in 2010. And the number of precincts were reduced from 41 in 2010 to 34 now. The voters per precinct almost doubled. And I don't understand why we would be making our precincts smaller when our growth is so high. So in 2010, we had about 3,300 voters per precinct, and in 2020, with our last election, we had 7,440 voters approximately for the voting centers, because there was only 25 voting centers open, or around 7,000 per precinct. So in our Constitution, we have the right to vote on Election Day. Article 2, Distribution of Power, Section 7, it says that our voting will be done on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Said elections shall terminate the same day. And my question is, if we're allowed to vote on voting day, and a lot of voters are feeling strongly that they want to do that because of some of the concerns and the confidence they have in the voting on machines, would our current voting machines or the plans for voting machines be able to handle that volume? They would have to handle 620 voters per hour if everyone decided to vote on voting day. At an 80% turnout like we had in 2020, they'd have to handle 490 voters per hour. I don't see how that could happen with the way that the ballot marking devices work and the long lines we just saw when we had a lower turnout in this last November election.
20 seconds.
Okay. So just my concern is that I hope that you will look at the funding for the machines that are being proposed by the Election Commission and look at the alternatives and go back to small precinct voting, hand-marked paper ballots. Thank you.
Laura Turner.
Laura Turner. Good evening and Happy New Year. I hope this will be the year Williamson County adopts historic preservation tools to protect and preserve what is left of our county's storied historic structures and places. Up until now, it has been completely up to citizens to stand up and speak out for these treasured resources. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it is also long overdue. We lost the 1899 Perkins farmhouse at the corner of Old Natchez Trace in Old Hillsboro. It was demolished before our eyes after the owner had said we could move it across Old Hillsboro to the Wade's house, which stands on Perkins land. Citizens for Old Natchez Trace fought long and hard for a sensitive template to protect and preserve this iconic, beloved road. Nick Fielder, retired state archaeologist, and I confirmed the 1801 Little Harpeth River crossing to Williamson County is in Edwin Warner Park. It goes to Vaughn Road, and again, this is the original 1801 roadbed, continuing across Sneed on the Curry Farm to the 1801 Harpeth River crossing over to Old Natchez Trace, which ends at Old Hillsboro Road. You turn right, continue through Leapers Fork to Garrison Creek, and up to the Parkway. We are working with the National Register of Historic Places to amend the listing of the 1801 Natchez Trace. I look to you, our county leaders, to create historic preservation tools to help save and preserve what historic resources we have left in the county. Thank you.
Joni Cole.
My name is Joni Cole. My husband and I, Michael, we own Grays on Main and Obie Joyful. Roughly 12 years ago, Michael and I bought the Grays on Main building after it had been empty for 10 years. We put $1 million of our personal money into that building to renovate that building for a restaurant, a music venue, and a space for people to gather and to pay homage or respect to the building and the history that was there already. It took us 18 months to renovate that building. Not only that, we also spent an additional $100,000 to put in a sewer system to connect 3rd and 4th with another building owner that people today enjoy and have hooked onto. We had to do that just to get a CO. So we did all of that. In 2020, our property taxes were $9,000. In 2022, our property taxes are now $25,000. That is very hard for us to absorb. Not only do we own the Grays on Main building, we are tenants at the OBJ building. So we're very blessed that we did not have to raise the rent for the OBJ building, that our owner has absorbed those the taxes, but that doesn't happen to everyone. So we're very blessed in that arena. My question to you guys is, if you want downtown Franklin to look and feel the way it does today, then this has to stop. The trickle-down effect from raising property taxes to exactly what some of the other folks have talked about is that we cannot take care of our employees. We cannot maintain the buildings. We cannot continue with the feeling, the history, the heritage of downtown Franklin and have a viable business on Main Street. So Michael and I very much support the tax resolution, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Joni. And our last speaker is Rudy Jordan.
Hello, I'm Rudy Jordan. I sent all of you a letter today and sent pictures of what Main Street looked like in 1984. Heidi spoke so well about what is needed. I am the face of 1984 on Main Street. When we went in, we were losing buildings. We were flooding. Sidewalks were broken. Downtown was in disarray. And I would say that we were losing Main Street by neglect. Today, we stand the chance of losing Main Street because of a success story that's caught up with all of us. I want to thank you, the County Commission, for supporting us all these years. Even in 1984, you made a contribution to our newly formed nonprofit organization. Clyde Lynch, who was the finance director, wanted to know how much of the money was going toward my salary. But other than that, we had a very smooth relationship. You know Clyde. And his, yeah, exactly. So anyway, after we got the Great American Main Street Award, we got so much publicity nationally and internationally that suddenly we became the destination for tourists. It became harder for local people to shop downtown, but we still have local people that not only count on downtown, but look forward to coming there when they bring people to town. I would say, as the former director of the Heritage Foundation and the Downtown Franklin Association, and having bought 2 properties on Main Street after I'd retired from those businesses, this is the heart and soul of our town. It has always taken a public-private partnership to make it work. And one point I do want to make is that if you are able to go through with this resolution to establish a downtown tax district, we who do have triple nets are able to directly pass that savings on to our tenants. Then it becomes a win-win. If the taxes go down, then the tenants do not have to pay as much. Then the people who shop downtown don't have to pay as much. We hope that we can continue to work with you to see the success story of Main Street and downtown go forward. Thank you so very much.
Ms. Jordan. And that concludes citizen communication. I want to thank everyone who came to speak. On to communications and messages. We have one resolution that has been pulled. That is 123-1, pulled at the request of Judge Guffey to possibly come back next month. We also have a request, if there's no objection, to move Resolution 123-16 to the front of the resolutions. Do I hear any objection to moving that resolution up front? Seeing none, we will move Resolution 123-16 to the front. Now, reports of county offices. Mayor Rogers Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I have 3 items tonight. First of all, I would like to ask our new HR director to come up front so you can meet Claire. Claire Cawthorn is a resident of Rutherford County, but we went through a very lengthy process. She'll be taking the place of Mike Weber. Mike is actually retiring, and we're having a kind of a celebration tomorrow afternoon, so if you have an opportunity to go down and have a conversation with Mike, I know that he would appreciate it after his many, many years of service. So at this time, I'll let Claire have a few remarks to make, and then I'll ask Phoebe to come up and give us a snapshot of the county. Claire?
I'd like to thank Mr. Mayor Anderson for giving me the opportunity to serve the county. I've
lived in the Rutherford County area, but I've also worked in the Williamson County area for quite some time now, for over 15 years. I understand what community service means. I've served as an alderman in another county in the state, and I'm very excited about the opportunity to give back. I look forward to filling the shoes that Mr. Mike Weber has put forth. 27 years is quite a statement. So I hope that I can be as successful and effective as Mr. Weber. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Claire. Phoebe, would you come up and give a snapshot of the county since the November County Commission meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson, Commissioners, and Happy New Year. So as all of you know, we issued bonds. We had 2 bonds we issued December the 20th. So as I had followed up with you all, I think you all are aware of the information and how much we issued those for. But for the record, as we are required to get those entered into the minutes this evening, I'd like to go ahead and present those 2 debt obligation reports. The first bond was for County District School Series 2022. The face of the bond was for $71,580,000. Interest rate was 3.58. The second bond we issued on December the 20th is for $46,050,000. This is our general obligation, public improvement, and school bonds, Series 2022. The interest rate we received on that bond was 3.6. I would like to ask if you would take a look at your budget reports. For this packet, obviously, with not having that December meeting, we have 2, so we will be presenting the October and the November. There was a notation made after balancing that last month. If you will take a look at your budget report, you will notice in October there were some budget amendments listed for the general debt service and the rural debt service. We noticed those were actually misposting. They had been posted twice. So if you take a look and compare that with your November balance, you will see there are no budget amendments in the November budget report. So I just wanted to draw your attention that that was a correction. That correction was made after the October month had been closed in the system, and that's why it's showing in 2 different months. But I did want to let you know that those November balances are correct and have been double-checked. The other thing I would like to draw to your attention is for the Cool Springs Conference Center. The county has received their portion of profits for the last 2 months. So we received a profit to the county of $41,869 for the month of November and $87,654 for the month of October. So those are up. We have pleasantly been received a profit for the last actually 4 months. So July was the only thing that we had a low month at the Cool Springs Conference Center. You also find in your packet the normal reports for the November privilege tax. Our November privilege tax collections are up for November compared to that of October. We have been reporting and keeping an eye on those collections for Spring Hill, and you'll be happy to note on that November report that we did have some collections this month. The only other report I'd like to draw your attention to is the education impact. The balance for November collections was a little over $1 million, so we are still showing a total available of allocation of $60,645,000. That is not been adjusted for the $15 million we just took out for Cox Elementary, for East Cox Elementary. So I just wanted to make sure that if you're looking at those numbers will go down as these reports obviously are a month behind. So we have not moved that $15 million out on your reports, but we have went ahead and made that distribution to the school system. Is there any other questions or anything you all would like me to address at this time?
Questions for Mrs. Riley? I see none.
Chairman, my final request is to allow Matt Largen to come up and make some remarks. I think I'll let him introduce who he wants to bring up about the comments that he would like to make.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. And thank you so much for allowing me to have just a couple minutes to address you, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matt Largen, President and CEO of Williamson, Inc. We're simply the county's Chamber of Commerce and Office of Economic Development, and an economic development partner for the Commission and for the county. So typically once a year we come and talk to the Commission about what we're doing to help grow and sustain the Williamson County economy. And just as a reminder, probably for some of the new people in the commission, we actually work with you all annually on a contract basis. And at the end of the day, it's really about jobs. We all know here that it's the private sector that creates the jobs, not government, but there is an environment created by you all. You've been a great partner. Looked this up the other day, since 2013, our office has been involved in projects, both recruitment and existing, that have resulted in over 14,000 jobs. Those are jobs and opportunities for our friends, family, and neighbors in this community. And if you think about economic development, it's traditionally three things. It's recruitment of business, it's existing business, and it's also entrepreneurship. The recruitment always gets the headlines, but what really drives this economy are the existing businesses that are here and the small businesses in our county. Last year, we had 69 ribbon cuttings in Williamson County of new and mainly small business in our community. That was almost a record for us. And what I'm particularly proud about is that through the pandemic, at the end when we came out, Williamson County had the fifth most physical business establishment growth in the country. At 3,124 counties, we were number 5 for business growth. So we really saw a lot of growth, especially in the small business community during COVID. Kel did put a handout at your spot. You know Kel McDowell is our Director of Government Relations. Nathan Zipper's here. He does our business recruitment and investor relations. So you see this, you kind of see what the organization does. I know there's a full agenda tonight. Happy to answer questions. And also, if anybody wants to meet with me, especially some of the new commissioners, I know we had a chance to meet when we did the Meet the Candidates session with the Herald and WAKM, but I'm just Matt at WilliamsonChamber.com. Again, really appreciate the partnership with Williamson County government, and really it's an honor to get a chance to represent this community and this county in economic development.
Questions for Mr. Largen? Thank you, Matt.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes everything that I had planned to discuss tonight.
Questions for the mayor? Who do we have? Commissioner Lawrence.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mayor. Good to see you here tonight without a cane or a walker. I thought you'd have something like that with you tonight, but glad you had a good surgery and everything's going well, looks like. So. Just a quick, could you give us a quick update? I know the governor was in the county today about the broadband, and we've got, I get a lot of requests about that. So could you give us a quick update on what he said and where we're headed with broadband in Williamson County?
Absolutely, and if you don't mind, I will let Paul Webb, one of your fellow commissioners that was there, who has had his fingers involved. Brian was there, Lisa was there. Judy Herbert was there. We had several people represented today from this board, but I'll let Paul kind of give the snapshot and the overview of what we're looking at in broadband with Middle Tennessee Electric and United Communications throughout the Middle Tennessee area, and specifically about Williamson County.
Today, the governor kicked off a broadband plan using the ARPA funds that the state got for Hayes County. Started Williamson County over the north, going all the way.
Paul, your mic's not on. No.
Is this working? Fix it now. I'll go up there. We'll work on the microphones.
What the governor came down to Spring Hill, actually, northern Murray County, today was to announce grants from the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. Had the commissioner down and the person with the broadband, Taylor Beatty, which I think many of you have met as she's been out here over the last year or so explaining broadband. Basically, 8 counties in this area have got money from ARPA to expand the broadband through United Telecom. And the key part of this one, as far as it relates to Williamson County, they've got grants east of I-65 under the United States Department of Agriculture. These grants are primarily west of I-65, and the way to find out if you're there is to go to the website of Go United and then put in your address. And that will tell you, one, if you've got it, and then if you don't, if it shows that you have it and you know you don't, which that will do many times, go ahead and make a comment. Put your street address and what your issues are, because some of those areas show on the FCC maps, which is where they start, that you may have service, but it's not adequate service or it's not continuous service. And broadband would be from the major carriers, Comcast, Go United, AT&T, or even Dish Network, not the Skylink thing. So from what I got from Ms. Beatty today at that meeting, now that we've had the official announcement, that project will start. So we should see shovels in the ground sometime this spring. William Bradford made the point, he's the president of United Communications, he made the point that they're finishing up their engineering now, and that they expect that by this spring we should see lines up and holes being dug around the western part of Williamson County as well as in their other area. I know we're most concerned about Williamson County. I will add, you know, Commissioner Beathard was there, as was Commissioner Herbert, Commissioner Graves, if anybody else, and correct, Commissioner Lennox. If they heard something else, that in rough numbers, it's about 14,000 residential units in this 8-county area that they have tagged to get service out of this ARPA grant. So, any questions? Thanks.
Any other questions for the mayor or Mr. Webb? I see none. Superintendent Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually don't have any items on your agenda for tonight, but I do want to mention that we are in the process of our new 5-year strategic plan. Our most recent plan has been a driver for our decision-making, including our budgeting. So I do ask that you keep your eye out for some announcements related to some public meetings. Specifically, we have 5 regional meetings that will be happening in February. And we'll be publishing those tomorrow in our In Focus publication, but I do want to mention those right now. February 7th at Independence High School, we'll be meeting. February 9th at Brentwood Middle. February 13th at Franklin High. February 21st at Fairview High. And February 23rd at Mill Creek Middle School. We're going to have 12 to 14 meetings with various stakeholder groups, including those 5 public meetings. So certainly want you all to be a participant as we go through that strategic planning process, find out what our community values, work through setting some goals for ourselves over the next 5 years. So we're excited about that. Certainly open to any questions you may have about where we are with this school year. We just started our 2nd semester last week. And it's been a really good school year for our students so far.
Questions for Superintendent Golden? Ms. Mary Smith.
On? Okay. No questions. I just wanted to do a shout out. Speaking of District 5, just a little, shout out to Nolensville Knights for their football season. They ended their regular season 10-0 with an overall season of 12-1, going to the quarterfinal, unfortunately losing to the Page Patriots, also from District 5, in a really exciting game. So I want to give a call out to the Page Patriots for ending their season successfully, 12-3, and going all the way to state finals for the 2nd time in their program history. Also, both teams each had 3 players go to the 5A All-State High School football team, including the 2 starting quarterbacks and wide receivers. So I just wanted to do a shout out to the sports program. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And I can't resist making a comment related to that. Our strategic plan talks about excellence in academics, athletics, and the arts, where we have a supportive environment that challenges students in that way. I encourage you, if you don't have the WCS app, every school activity is posted on that app. You can find things to go to, and I know that you all have cards for admission to those events. Certainly welcome you.
Any other questions for the superintendent? Yes. Commissioner Lennox.
The dates and locations you mentioned earlier, are they posted on the WCS website?
We are posting them tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you.
From the Williamson Medical Center, do we have Phil Mazuka? There we are.
Chair, Commissioners, thanks again for letting us come and make some brief comments about what's going on at the hospital. I'm here with Mike Genesee, my CFO. After I'm done with my comments, he'll give you an update on the financial condition. So for the major project, it's moving along well. I don't know if I should say it, but it's ahead of schedule right now. Our ER for Phase 1, which is the waiting area and some of the expanded area of the ER, is going to open on May 12th of this year. Our postpartum that's relocating to the West Tower is going to open on May 25th of this year. The remainder of the West Tower is going to be, and as well as the ER, will be completed in May of 2024, as of today. We can see steel going up on the West Tower. We've seen all of the additional 3 stories of steel go up there. This week, we're pouring footings for our north wing of the West Tower, and within a couple weeks, we're going to pour the slab for the north wing. So, again, things are progressing well. We have a new MRI that we installed in our Bone and Joint Institute building, and that should relieve some of the wait time it takes for people to get MRIs. We're really excited about that. And then we have a new cardiac cath lab that is installed and should be operational by the end of the month. Our cardiologists are really excited about that. To give you a quick update on EMS, our Nolensville EMS station will be opening on January 29th. That'll take us to 18 units running every day. And we also go to, live for our new staffing model. Instead of staffing 24/48, we're going to 24/72, which is really commensurate with what other EMS lines are doing in this area. And although it's a bit of a increase in our cost, we just felt it was important for recruitment and retention of our staff. We hired 35 new staff because of the new staffing model. We have a little less than 25 positions remaining, which include PRN positions. We have most of the staff that we need at this point. So we're going from 175 staff members to, once we hire the additional 25 to 200. So we have a significant EMS staff out there. The 4 ambulances that we ordered a while back were due for delivery in December. That's been delayed, and we'll probably get those in summer of 2023. The 6 ambulances we ordered last July, it's a 2-year process to get them at this point, so we'll be getting those ambulances in the summer of 2024. And then, Mike, if you want to give a financial update.
Thank you. Good evening. I don't have a long report, just a couple variances I'd like to explain to you guys. It's on the financial statements highlight report. You can see we're reporting a net income of a little bit over $11 million for the month. Of course, that's because we recognized the ARPA funds that we received back in October. So that was almost $9.7 million. So excluding that at 9.7, we had a net income of about $1.5 million, which fortunately we could have used it, exceeded our budget by about $900,000, which brings our year-to-date number right to where we were budgeted. So it was, the year started out a little slower, and it's made up. We usually make up some ground in November and December. The other variance I'd like to talk about is the available to use cash. As you can see that it went up almost $65 million. It's actually $66 million, and that was the bond funds that we received. So those are the 2022 bond funds. And again, that with you all's help getting us that. So other than that, I mean, we had about where we thought we'd be. We made up our ground. I think we're $40,000 ahead of budget through November. So be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions pertaining to the Williamson Medical Center?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Richards.
Do you have public meetings for how the hospital board? Yeah, they're open to the public. When are those usually held? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the Williamson Medical Center? Thank you, gentlemen. Are there any other county offices wishing to report this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. If anyone is curious, it is 24-7 Georgia. Next on the agenda is elections and appointments. First up is the Stormwater Appeals Board, term expiring Davis Lamb, Brad Hoot, Liz McLaurin. Nominations are Davis Lamb, Brad Hoot, and Liz McLaurin. I'll entertain a motion. Proper motion from Commissioner Steve Smith, seconded by Commissioner Megan Guffey. Any questions or discussion? This will be a voice vote. Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the Zoning Appeals Board filing an unexpired term expiring 3/26. Resigning is Dave Osbrooks. Nomination is Matthew Roberts. Proper motion from Commissioner Megan Guffey, seconded by Commissioner Greg Sanford. Any discussion? I would like to add that Dave Osbrooks, many of you know him as a pillar in our community. Of course, his daughter, Dana Osbrooks, was a commissioner in District 12 for many years. Dave is resigning for health reasons after serving on the Zoning Appeals Board for 33 years, and we thank him for his service. If there's no other discussion and we're ready to vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. On to the consent agenda. There is a typo on one of the resolutions, Resolution 20. It should read McDaniel Road instead of Bethesda Road. We will make that correction and go ahead and vote on the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion. Proper motion from Commissioner Steve Smith, seconded by Commissioner Barb Sturgeon. Any discussions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor signify by pressing your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Greg?
We'll have to vote by voice.
Greg's going to vote by voice. What is your vote, Greg?
Yes.
Record the vote, Mr. Whidbey.
24 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. We have no unfinished business, so on to new business and appropriations. Again, we have moved up the resolution pertaining to the tax relief for the historic properties in downtown Franklin, that resolution being 12316, resolution of support for state legislation that would permit local governments in Tennessee to provide tax relief for certain historical commercial properties. Proper motion from Commissioner Jennifer Mason, seconded by Commissioner Pete Stresser. Tax Study Committee was 3-4, 1 against. Budget Committee took no action. Explanation, please, Commissioner Lawrence.
Okay, well, this is the same resolution we voted on in November. We had extensive discussion about. I want to thank, first of all, everybody who came out tonight to speak to this resolution and those who sent emails. I want to particularly thank Heidi Hood and the Downtown Franklin Association. They've worked real hard on this for the last several months with me and some others, and Kel McDowell as well. And also Commissioner Mason, thank her for, and the members of the tax committee for coming in December and rewriting this. We really didn't change it materially very much. We made sure we got all of the references to residential properties out of the resolution. So substantively, it is almost the same verbiage as what we had in November with very few changes. And you know, the reasons for these you've all heard tonight. These business owners got hit disproportionately compared to the other parts of the county when the reappraisal came through. These are all. This is the economic engine that drives our tourism, which as you've heard tonight and we talked about before, lowers our tax burden by $1,100 per citizen. These are all mostly small business owners that create the ambiance in the downtown district that own these businesses. And as you also heard, the triple net leases require that if the taxes go up, that's just going to be passed on to the business owners. So they all got hit with, most of them got hit with substantial increases in their rents because of the tax increase. So, and again, this is just a request to send to the state, asking them to give us an overlay to be able to create a tax overlay for historic buildings in Williamson County.
Commissioner Sturgeon.
Can you hear me?
Hear you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just two things. I want to, say I support this resolution because I believe locally we need as many tools in our tool belt as possible so that we can be reactive to economic forces when they happen. And waiting for the legislation to give us this is probably not as fast as I would like to move, but it's what needs to happen. Also want to point out that the sales tax revenue brought in by these businesses affects every household in the county, including those in Brentwood and Franklin and Fairview, the whole county. So from the information we got from Mr. Coleman, it appeared that it was vastly more expensive not to protect our Main Street than it was to perhaps, if it's deemed appropriate, produce a district that gives a little bit of relief or any other measure that gives relief to their taxes. But mostly I dialed in here because I wanted to know if the chairman of the budget committee could explain what transpired in budget committee, that they did not listen to this resolution, as far as I can tell.
Commissioner Herbert?
There was no one that had signed on this resolution there to explain anything about this resolution, so we just passed on it. There was nobody to speak on it at the budget.
Is that a legal requirement that the person is a sponsor to talk about the resolution?
No, it's not. That was just our decision.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sturgeon. Commissioner Richards?
All right, we're going to give this a shot. Commissioner Tunnicliffe was nice enough to organize a meeting with our city commissioners in Brentwood, and we had a discussion about this historical tax break for properties. The unanimous decision from the city commission was no. They felt, and probably correctly so, that Brentwood would have to bear the burden of whatever tax break that Franklin got, and I think I share that opinion. Until we know exactly who's going to pay for this tax break, I'm not sure exactly why we're voting on this. Furthermore, whatever we're sending to the state, we don't know what they're going to end up passing, and we're going to have a sense of obligation to pass whatever legislation, to agree with whatever legislation. I know we can opt out, but since we're going to be the county commission who's asking for this, it's going to make it difficult for us to pass on what they're passing. I did speak with Representative Gino Bolso about this, which I think is the most important piece of the puzzle. He's been left out of this since the beginning. I know he sat down at an initial meeting and he was not familiar with any of this. I think that's the most productive path forward right now, is to sit down and have a public meeting with him and, all the stakeholders, including county commissioners, citizens, city commissioners, can sit down and discuss this. I think that's the most productive way to go forward.
I'm sorry that I passed Commissioner Mason earlier. Commissioner Mason.
I do want to just state for the record that the tax committee took this resolution on after it failed in the November meeting. We did hold 2 meetings, and I do want to thank all the members of the tax study committee. The first meeting was a doozy. I think it was 2.5 hours. The majority of the county commissioners did attend, and I appreciate everybody being here. Everybody who was here was given an opportunity to speak. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, a lot of opinions, people for, people against. We had multiple speakers at the first meeting to kind of help answer a lot of questions that everybody had. And then ultimately, a new resolution was drafted, very similar to the one Commissioner Lawrence had, hopefully addressing a lot of the concerns, the unanswered questions that commissioners had. And so at our second tax study meeting, we did, again, briefly discuss it. Again, it was open to all commissioners, and all commissioners present were given the opportunity to speak, and it passed 3-1. Ultimately, I will tell you, as chair of the tax study, I have looked at this issue on both sides. Depending on the day, you could have asked me which side I would have fallen on. When you hear the thought that you're giving a government handout, of course, that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand out. And you think, well, that's not what we want to do. But then at the same time, when you understand the big picture, ultimately, what we're trying to do is preserve that one part of our county, which we keep talking about as downtown Franklin. But again, if this resolution passes, it potentially would go in statewide. And so you're not just talking about downtown Franklin, you're talking about perhaps areas in Nolensville, Spring Hill, in fact, maybe areas in Fairview, the unincorporated county that could benefit from this. And so for me, it ultimately came down to the numbers. How much was the tax break, quote, going to cost versus how much we bring in revenue. And I realize that everybody that comes to downtown Franklin doesn't spend all their money there, but they do then branch out into the other areas. It is a way to get kind of them into our county, their foot in the door. And so for me, it simply became a numbers game, and I didn't want to cut my nose off to spite my face and giving a, quote, government handout when it was ultimately going to cost each individual household, because we know right now the math says that it generates $1,100 tax break per household. You lose that, and then I'm asking everybody in District 3, each household, to pay $1,100 more in taxes. And I just can't do that. And so I have looked at this, I've gone back and forth, and ultimately tonight my vote is going to be yes. I do think it's something the state should debate. I don't know what it'll look like if it's even taken up by the state, because again, for our legislators to embrace it, we need a 2/3 vote, not just majority, 2/3. And so depending on how ultimately it comes out, I may not be in support of it at that time, but I do think it's a conversation worth having, and I'd like to make the first step. And so ultimately my vote tonight will be yes. Thank you.
Commissioner Herbert.
Okay, I worked in downtown Franklin for over 20 years, so I have a soft spot for downtown Franklin. And Rudy, I remember when it was really bad. So I understand how great it is now. And when Kyle and Heidi met with me, I thought, I understand, because I remember them talking about how high the appraisals were on these downtown buildings. And I was like, wow. And I thought, I can understand. They generate a lot of sales revenue. And then I started thinking more, well, you can't do just downtown. You're talking about buildings in Nolensville, you're talking about everywhere. And so that's going to affect the revenue on how we fund everything. And, I can't ask people in Bethesda and College Grove, guess what, we're going to raise your taxes to help out people in downtown. I mean, I understand, but it's really hard for me to face the people I represent and to say I'm going to increase your taxes. And it's not just us, the county, also the city. Is the city going to cut the taxes? Is the Franklin Special School District? I can tell you right now, they're not going to cut their taxes for y'all. So, you know, this is a whole lot bigger picture than it appears. So I'll have to vote against it. Thank you.
Commissioner Tunnicliffe.
I've got, I don't know if it's on or not, several concerns. We keep hearing the number of $1,100. I get that. That's a nice, pretty number that was thrown out. We don't know how that truly plays out if this happens or doesn't happen. So I can guarantee you that if we pass something like this after it goes through the state, everyone's taxes will go up in the county, period. So we got to make up the loss somewhere, and I don't see any of our departments running forward to cut their budgets to cover that. I do represent Brentwood. I have had not a single person contact me that wanted me to support this, but I have had a lot of people not want me to support it. Commissioner Richards, it's very nice to say I put together a meeting. I'd like to say I did. I did not. They reached out to us, asked us to come, and wanted to hear the story. The story was presented to them. They had the resolution. I don't know if I had unanimous support from the city commissioners that were there. Yeah, unanimous support against it. So as a Brentwood city commissioner, as a county commissioner representing the city of Brentwood predominantly, I am going to have to vote against it this evening. I also just want everyone to think for a minute that this money is not going to the city of Franklin. When we give this cut, it's coming out of a county budget that every resident pays into, and it's going to a private citizen. And there's no guarantee of $1,100 it's going to cost every single person in this county. So the number sounds good, but let's talk facts. That's all I want to do. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. At the end of the day, I mean, we're using downtown Franklin as the example, but I know as I've looked at this resolution, it's not just downtown Franklin. There's potentially historic commercial areas all across unincorporated counties, municipalities, all across the state. It's just we happen to be on the leading edge of an exceptional circumstance that's just occurred. In one tax assessment, you've got an area where property values went up 250%. Like, that's pretty exceptional. And in a community that's growing at a rate that we are, and we've taken on an additional 70,000 people in the last 10 years, we're trying to fight to maintain some sort of local community character and some economic vitality with those types of businesses in this area. I'm hearing a lot of assumptions about what this is and what this is not. I appreciate the tax study going through this because I know the changes in the resolution tonight addressed my concerns with some of the verbiage in it and what we are asking for. At the end of the day, we're asking them to attempt to craft some legislation that can give some tax relief to those businesses in these districts and that local governments may opt into, right? If it doesn't meet that criteria and we don't like it, then we just don't ever opt into it. So, but it at least gets the ball rolling for them to start working on something along this. So I'm cautious of any assumptions that have been said tonight. I'm more interested in the intent and what we're asking them to try and do, right? Because we do have an exceptional circumstance that has occurred in this community that I think is probably on the forefront for a lot of communities across the state, and not just downtown Franklin, but also in the unincorporated areas. So I'm comfortable with this, and I'll be supporting or voting in support of this. Thanks.
Commissioner Hester.
Thank you for the red light there. I have certain questions. They are rhetorical questions. What is the verbiage certain historical commercial properties? To what does that refer? What is the Franklin Special School District going to do about their tax dollars? They don't have any students in downtown Franklin. However, I truly don't believe they're going to give up their tax revenue for historical commercial properties. How can we be certain that this tax relief would go to maintenance of these buildings? That's really getting into the weeds. I think that is getting too far into this situation. I've gone back and forth on this. I do remember downtown Franklin in the late 70s very, very well. And I have had people that I know who are long life residents, and they've told me what it's like in the basements of those buildings and the way it was before Franklin was revitalized. I've gone back and forth, and I still may go back and forth. Thank you.
Commissioner Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Commissioner Mason, I've gone back and forth, and I'm still going back and forth. I think what we have to be careful about doing is, as a government, is picking and choosing who we're going to raise and lower taxes on. Because if we remember, in November or October, every one of the commissioners present, except for myself, voted to raise taxes on developers, basically, people who are building houses in the county. And now we're considering providing relief to another group of people. And while that may be beneficial to the county, I think we as a whole body have to be careful when we look at picking and choosing what groups and what industries we're going to raise and lower taxes on. With that being said, though, I'm going to support this tonight because I think we deserve, and they deserve, the opportunity to see what the state comes up with. And as Commissioner Williams said, we always have the opportunity to opt out. And so while I'll support this tonight, doesn't mean I'll support it when it comes back. But I do want to see what the state and our legislative body can come up with and give to us as a tool that we can potentially use. So thank you.
Commissioner Sanford.
Thank you. Born and raised here in this county, small business owner my entire life, several businesses. I had to pick and choose when opening those businesses in Franklin where I can afford to go. I knew I was in the jail criminal business, bail bond business for 20 plus years, and I always wanted to be by the jail. Well, when I first started out, I could not afford to be by the jail. So I had to rent some space from former Judge Lonnie Hoover, and it was a upstairs closet, if you will, because that's all I could afford. I say all that to say that when opening a business, when buying a building, you have to be cognizant of what you're getting yourself into. I heard the term disproportionate tax increase, but yet these buildings doubled, tripled, quadrupled in value. If it doesn't work, go sell the building. Pay your 1031 exchange it, or pay your capital gains if you can't afford the taxes. Your taxes went up because the building value went up. I'm really ticked off the city of Franklin. Y'all are inside the city of Franklin city limits. Where are they at on this? Nowhere. They want to ride our coattails. This county is in no financial shape to be giving tax cuts anywhere. This is a government handout is what it is. Call a spade a spade. If Nolensville, which I represent Nolensville, came to me with something like this, I'd be against it too. They have a city government. Franklin has taken no action. This county cannot afford to give any tax cuts because if we do, it's got to be made up from somewhere else. We have the sheriff back there that can't get deputies because we don't pay enough. He needs a new jail. Juvenile justice needs a new facility. $300 million, whatever that number is. We need a paid county fire department. Desperately. Another couple $100 million. We don't have the money to be giving government handouts. I'm perplexed that the city of Franklin has taken no action for you people. Yes, we're the county, but you rely on the city government to take care of y'all. They're only $262 million in debt. We're at 1.2. Fixing to be, I would say, if Jason Golden gets his way and sheriff gets his way and county fire department gets paid, you're at $2 billion. Can't afford it. I'm dead set against it. I think the government has no place getting involved in private business. And I'm dead set against it. Thank you.
Commissioner Lennox.
Hi there. I appreciate all the people that are local to Franklin, that you've sent us letters and very detailed letters, and you've come to these meetings and poured out your heart. I truly appreciate that. I will say I moved here 3 years ago. I've visited Franklin and Nashville area many times in my past, and I moved here because of how quaint downtown is. That was a huge attraction for me. Now, I do live out past Leapers Fork, and I own a small business. And I will say, am I for handing out tax breaks? No. But this is not necessarily handing out a tax break. It's trying to come up with, number one, it clearly says a resolution to create mechanisms to allow local governments to offer relief in businesses operating in historic commercial properties. It's giving us a mechanism to potentially offer relief. And whether anybody agrees or not, Franklin is a tourist draw. It's a very special, we are so honored and very special to have Franklin. It's beautiful. I have more tourists, and it's because of Franklin that they go to Leapers Fork, and then they come out to my little tiny business way out in the middle of nowhere. And we're blessed that we have created a draw. But I hear more and more from people who visit from all over that they've come to Franklin. And I benefit from that as a small business owner. And trust me, this is the winter months, and I need all the business I can get. But Franklin is a huge draw, and I can't help but, even though I'm in District 1, but understand that that does impact the whole county. It's not just the city of Franklin. We as a county benefit by Airbnbs that people purchase. And let me tell you, Leapers Fork has a very large share. I'm sure Chaz and Matt can understand. A ton of Airbnbs out in Leapers Fork in my area in District 1. And we do benefit as a county, not just Franklin downtown. So I am in support of this. I think it's important. You see on the news all the cities that are suffering and, all the nasty negative things about all these other cities that don't have what we have, and we're very special. And I do think we need to work hard, and I appreciate all the efforts Jennifer's made and that whole committee to try to come up with something. Do we know all the answers? No. There's still a lot of work to be done. And like Jeff and Jennifer said, maybe I'll change my mind based on what the state comes back with. But in the interim, I think we have something special, and we really need to protect it. Do we all know all the answers? No. But, sometimes you have to walk into darkness and look for the light. We will come up with a solution, or we'll agree to disagree, but I just don't think it's fair not to at least look after businesses who did get a substantial tax increase. I'm blessed we did not. I don't know if I want to say that too loud, but I do understand, and I understand as a small business owner, that it's a huge impact. And so I do support this, and I appreciate all your efforts to educate us, the letters. I have read every single one of them, and I truly appreciate Heidi's efforts as well. Thank you very much. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Richards. Before we go back to Commissioner Richards, is there anyone else wishing to speak? Richards has already spoken once. Okay, Commissioner Richards.
I just wanted, before we take a vote, I wanted to remind everybody what I originally said. Gino Bolso wants to sit down and discuss this. He's going to be the one who's going to be writing this legislation if we do ask that. So whether or not this passes or not, he's the man to be speaking with. And I would love to facilitate a public meeting where we can sit down and discuss that, either way this vote goes.
Commissioner Mary Smith.
I just want to reiterate, I think, what Commissioner Mason and Commissioner Graves stated. This is not an easy decision to make, but I think what's really special about this resolution is it's just a step one. We're not solving anything. We're making a lot of assumptions. We don't know what the state legislature is going to come back with, but I think ultimately, if we have an opportunity to protect those parts of the county that we really value, that we should at least make an effort to say, listen, we're going to do what we can. And maybe, to Commissioner Sanford's point, maybe it is going to be mostly on the city of Franklin, but I think we need to work together cooperatively with the municipal governments to see what we can come up with and to kind of give ourselves a chance to think creatively, because I know at the end of the day, I do not want to go back to my residents and have them raise their property taxes. And I don't want to be in the business of picking winners and losers, but I do think that we all win when we can have a tax relief by our households having that tourist attraction in downtown Franklin. So I think we need the opportunity to let the state legislature know where we stand and to give our tax, to get out to our residents and help them to understand the benefits of doing something like this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Herbert.
Question.
We have a motion to call the question. Do we have a second? Second. Is that a voice vote or is it it's a voice vote? Can be. We'll do this by voice. All those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Question is called. At this point, are we ready to vote? I will reemphasize what Commissioner Mason said, that while this resolution could pass with a simple majority, for it to go to the state, it requires a 2/3 supermajority, which would be 16 yeses or yes votes.
We'll have to change the thing before you vote if you're saying 16.
Well, that's just, it'll still pass from the county.
It's not a rules requirement. Point of order, it's not required.
Right.
It is asked for by our state legislature, by the state delegation. Thank you.
Yeah, our state representatives have asked for a 2/3 vote. It can still pass on the commission side with a simple majority. But Sam Whitson, Jack Johnson, Jake Bulso have asked for a 2/3 vote. If we're all ready to vote, if you're in favor, signify by pressing your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whidbey.
17 yes, 7 no.
Resolution passes on both counts. Moving on, we'll go back to the beginning with Resolution 123-2. Resolution appropriating and amending the 22-23 Health Department budget by $360. Revenues to come from state. Okay, revenues to come from state unclaimed property. Proper motion from Commissioner Guffey, seconded by Commissioner Stresser. Public Health Committee was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee was 3-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Herbert.
This is $360 of unclaimed property funds that is owed to the health department, and this is our way to get it.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor signify by pressing your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Waiting on Sanford, Commissioner Sanford. Sorry. It's all right. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whidbey.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 123-3, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into an agreement with Tennessee State Library and Archives and appropriating and amending the 22-23 archives budget by $4,097, revenues to come from grant funds. Proper motion from Commissioner Paul Webb, seconded by Commissioner Mary Smith. Budget Committee was 3-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Herbert.
This is state grant funds in the amount of $4,097 for the Williamson County Archives.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time.
Mr. Chair, I've been logged out. Technical issues.
Wanna-
Vote by voice if that's okay. We'll get this worked out.
Okay.
I'll vote in favor.
Paul Webb votes in favor. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 123-4, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into a grant contract with Tennessee State Library and Archives and appropriating and amending the 22-23 library budget by $9,807. Motion made by Commissioner Greg Sanford, seconded by Commissioner Tom Tunnicliffe. Library Board was 7-4-0 against. Budget Committee 3-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Webb.
This is a state library technology grant from the State Library and Archives. It will require matching funds, which are in the budget. This is a typical yearly grant that's received from the state in various amounts.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor signify by pressing your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 123-5, resolution appropriating and amending the 22-23 Public Safety Emergency Communications budget by $125,000. Revenues to come from contributions received from Emergency Communications District. Proper motion, Commissioner Steve Smith, seconded by Commissioner Aaron Nations. ECD Board was 6-4-0 against. Law Enforcement was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee 3-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Sanford.
The board of directors of the ECD board have graciously contributed $125,000 for the Emergency Communications Department for salaries that Christy back here runs that are much needed. So it's a very good thing.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 123-6, resolution accepting a donation of $5,000 for the purchase of equipment for the Williamson County Sheriff's Office and appropriating and amending the 22-23 Williamson County Sheriff's Office budget by $5,000. Revenues to come from donations. Proper motion from Commissioner Lisa Lennox, seconded by Commissioner Megan Guffey. Law Enforcement was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee 3-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Herbert.
This is from a resident of Williamson County that's made a very generous donation of $5,000 to the Sheriff's Office for the purchase of law enforcement equipment.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. I'm sorry, there was a question in there. We've got a question from Commissioner Mary Smith.
I was just wondering, when we did the ride-alongs, Commissioner Lennox and I, they were talking about the tactical vest. Is that possibly going to be used, the $5,000 going to be used for that? Just wondering if it had been identified yet.
Sheriff, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if this would be used to purchase any of the tactical vests that the deputies had mentioned to myself and Commissioner Lennox. That would actually...
We don't know yet.
You don't know
It's
yet?
just 5,000. We're preparing that for our next budget, so we don't know yet.
Okay.
It won't be coming out of this budget, so I don't know yet.
Okay, so you just haven't allocated it to anything specific. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor have already pressed their yes button, I believe. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 123-7, resolution of the Williamson County Board of Commissioners appropriating $8,000 for replacement water fountains, revenues to come from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Proper motion from Commissioner Paul Webb, seconded by Commissioner Drew Torres. Law Enforcement was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee 3-4-0 against. Exclamation, please. I'm sorry, that was, Law Enforcement didn't call on this one. Budget Committee was 4-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Webb.
As part of the ARPA funds, public health is an issue, and
changing water fountains into water bottle refill stations is qualified under the ARPA grant. Of this up to $8,000, 2 of these units will be at the main library in Franklin, 1 in Nolensville, 1 in Fairview.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 123-8, resolution of the Williamson County Board of Commissioners appropriating $17,000 for expanded Wi-Fi service at 3 library branches. Revenues to come from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Proper motion from Commissioner Paul Webb, seconded by Commissioner Chaz Morton. Budget Committee was 4-4, 0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Webb.
Chair, during the pandemic, we found that many folks needed to go to public areas such as libraries in order to access Wi-Fi for school and work, and thus this is the library is going to take the equipment to expand their Wi-Fi outside along the parking lot with 2 of these additional units, we'll call them, at the main library in Franklin, 1 in Nolensville, 1 in Fairview, 1 in Leapers Fork. And by the way, Bethesda is expected to get one with the new library.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 123-9, resolution of the Williamson County Board of Commissioners appropriating $195,100 for stormwater infrastructure assessment. Revenue to come from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Proper motion from Commissioner Webb, seconded by Commissioner Sanford. Highway Commission was 5-4, 0 against. Budget Committee was 4-4, 0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Webb.
Chair, the ARPA Act was changed by the U.S. Department of Treasury to allow using funds to do a review of the entire stormwater system in an area. And so this 195-100 is to be used for that. We have a representative from the Highway Department here to answer any detailed questions.
I have a question from Commissioner Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that I appreciate getting this grant because we have so many water streams in Williamson County, and this would include an inspection of many of our bridges that we need to have. Thank you.
Commissioner Mary Smith.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can answer this question. I was just wondering what the scope of the area was, because as Commissioner Hester mentioned, we do have some areas in District 5 where stormwater runoff has been an issue. So I was just kind of wondering if you could speak to what the scope is and what the key objectives, and how long it would take to get the plan complete.
Throughout the whole county, and what it is for structures under 20 feet. The state inspects all structures 20 feet or larger. So it would just give us assessment of those structures and the condition of those structures.
When do you anticipate the plan to be complete?
I don't know how long it'll take, probably around 6 months, but it would start once we had approval.
Any other questions? I see none. If you're ready to vote, if you're in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no button. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. I think Commissioner Landrum is absent. Commissioner Williams, there we go. You can mark Commissioner Landrum as absent for the time being. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
23 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 12310, resolution of the Williamson County Board of Commissioners appropriating $50,000 for additional air hand dryers for the Williamson County Ag Expo Center. Revenues to come from the American Rescue Plan Acts Fund. Proper motion from Commissioner Paul Webb, seconded by Commissioner Megan Guffey. Budget Committee was 4-4, 0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Webb.
Again, during the pandemic, there was emphasis on washing hands, and so you need hand dryers to wash those hands. And a review at the Ag Center showed that we were needing more of these units, and so we're going to install up to 13 with funds allow, which at $50,000, we think at this time that we can install those 13 at the Ag Center.
Any questions? Commissioner Richards.
Commissioner Webb, I think during the budget committee meeting, you might have mentioned this. How many hand dryers is for that $50,000? Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whidbey.
21 yes, 3 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 12311, resolution appropriating funds and amending the 22-23 Finance Office budget by $24,221.25 for the provision of a part-time grant writing position. Revenues to come from unappropriated county general funds. Proper motion from Commissioner Judy Herbert, seconded by Commissioner Jeff Graves. Human Resources Committee was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee was 4-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Herbert.
This is for a part-time grant writing position to seek grant funding for the Williamson County government. It'll hopefully find us a lot of money to fund things.
Any questions? Commissioner Mary Smith.
I was just wondering if there was a way, so I know that grants are really important to the revenue coming in. Is there a way that we can kind of just do a review on an annual basis to make sure that this position is in fact, paying for itself? I don't know what our grant revenue was for this last year. I know that somebody was writing grants because we've approved quite a few of them. So I don't know if anybody can answer that question or who would be the appropriate person to answer.
Riley?
County, for fiscal year 22, the county received about 1.8, a little over 1.8 in grant revenue. So we are looking at this person being part-time with approximately 25 hours per week at and salary not to exceed the $45,000. So yes, we are doing this first year so we can kind of see how things are going. Obviously, we'll reassess. We're hoping it will continue to grow and it will serve its purpose. And then next year, we may even explore either keeping the part-time or extending it to full-time.
Any other questions for Ms. Riley while she's here? I'm sorry. Well, let's see. Commissioner Lennox, I believe, is next.
So have we filled this with a contractor in the past, or how, was this a full-time or a part-time person in the past?
It was not. We would do, different grants had different things, usually with contract basis. But those contracts can end up to be about 10% usually of the award is what they ask for. So that can get a little steep. So we're looking at actually what this is going to be, would be more cost beneficial.
I hope we can find somebody. This is kind of low. Don't we think the salary's kind of low? Or maybe I'm just out of touch. But still, I was in HR for 26 years. This is for a grant writer. I mean, if we can get somebody great, wonderful. But otherwise, thank you. That's all.
This is from just January to June.
Oh, it's half a year. Oh.
Right. What you're approving the budget for is the 24 to 21 is just the half a year, just the remaining
That
for
makes
this
more
fiscal
sense
year.
then. I
Yes.
was like,
Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, speaking of that, if you decide to go on and continue for another half of year or hire this position as a full-time, will that require the county commission to approve that also?
We will, this is actually, will come in, if this is approved, this will be approving another position part-time. And then if it goes to full-time, we would have to come back and approve and ask for that to be transferred from part-time to full-time position.
Thank you.
Other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Mrs. Riley. With that, if you're ready to vote, if you're in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whidbey.
23 yes, 1 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 12312, resolution to surplus and approve the conveyance of Sheriff's Office equipment and authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to execute all documents needed to complete the conveyance. Proper motion from Commissioner Lisa Lennox, seconded by Commissioner Tom Tunnicliffe. Law Enforcement was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee was 4-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Sanford.
The sheriff has some outdated Axon taser equipment that he would like to donate to another county that could benefit greatly from these supplies. Our sheriff's office can't use these anymore, so we'd like to give them away.
Questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 12313, resolution to surplus and approve the conveyance of a German Shepherd K-9 officer with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office to his law enforcement handler. Proper motion made by Commissioner Drew Torres, seconded by Commissioner Megan Guffey. Law Enforcement was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee was 4-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Sanford.
Resolution just authorizes for Jinx, the K-9 officer, to go be with his handler that he spent most of his adult life with in his retirement.
Questions? Commissioner Guffey.
I was fortunate enough to meet Officer Jinx and just want to commend him for his service and thank him and congratulate him on retirement.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 12314, essentially the same thing. Resolution to surplus and approve the conveyance of a German Shepherd K-9 officer with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office to his law enforcement handler. Proper motion from Commissioner Torres, seconded by Commissioner Nations. Law Enforcement was 4-4-0 against. Budget Committee was 4-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Sanford.
Same resolution as last time, except K-9 officer Nico would like to go be with his handler.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Commissioner Sanford, there we go. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 12315, resolution of support for state legislation that would allow members of county legislative bodies to participate in scheduled commission meetings via remote means. Proper motion made by Commissioner Mary Smith, seconded by Commissioner Paul Webb. Budget Committee was 4-4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Webb.
What I'm asking for is that the legislature go ahead and revive a bill filed by Senator from Knox County, Senator Biggs, in the 2021 session that would permit county and city legislative bodies participate in meetings by electronic means. If you look at Senate Bill 301 from 2021, you'll see the details. Senator Biggs is, if he hasn't already, is planning to resubmit this, and what I've found out from the TCCA is that some members of the House are also planning to resubmit a similar bill in this session.
Commissioner Hester.
Question addresses not only to be able to participate by remote means, but to vote by remote means. By not being present at a meeting, aren't there things that you necessarily or don't understand? Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Webb.
The way this bill is set up, that the county or the city legislative body would have to agree to do it if they have equipment, which in our case we do, and it has limitations in that you'd have to have a quorum of people present before the other person could participate, And there's certain other things. It had to be a family or a medical emergency of the member of the legislative body, have to be called into military service, and the laws that are being proposed would may or may not give exceptions for doing work. And this bill, as it was presented in 2021, limited that to 2 meetings per calendar year.
Commissioner Nations.
I think this is just more out of curiosity for legal counsel. We're clearly doing this tonight. Are we violating the law tonight, or is this unnecessary?
No, it's our opinion that the Americans with Disabilities Act provides for an exception to any state law prohibition. This would just make it clear as to what the criteria would be and the number of meetings that could happen in. It would also set the criteria as to the member being able to hear all the other members and all the other members being able to hear them. But in our particular case tonight, it's because federal law trumps state law, quite honestly.
So this would basically codify this into state law?
It would, and it would potentially be a little broader in scope than meeting the definition under the ADA.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are we ready to vote? As a reminder, this is another resolution that, while it could pass with a majority to move forward in the state, will require 16 yes votes based on the 24 commissioners that are present today. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whidbey.
23 yes, 1 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 12317, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into a lease agreement with U.S. Congressman Mark Green. Proper motion made by Commissioner Mary Smith, seconded by Commissioner Drew Torres. Budget Committee was 4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Herbert.
Green is already leasing office space in the courthouse, and this is just to extend another lease agreement for him.
Any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whidbey.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 12318, resolution to amend the rules and regulations pertaining to the regulation of dogs and cats in Williamson County, Tennessee. Proper motion by Commissioner Iola, seconded by Commissioner Tunnicliffe. Public Health Committee was 4-0 against. Explanation, please, Commissioner Iola. You're on now.
Am I on? Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a much-needed revision to our existing regulations regarding dogs and cats and pretty much animal administration in Williamson County. This has been a months-long process along with Lisa Carson and the director for this department as well. So I'm going to defer to them for explanation on the more finer points, but we'll be happy to answer any questions because this is a lengthy resolution that really updates to state standards, commonality across jurisdictions, and updates it for our current times.
Question from Commissioner Williams.
I was going to ask if Andrea could come up and just have an open discussion, not in committee when this came through. I find this funny. My dad was an attorney for almost 40 years, and he said if he ever wrote a book, he would call it Dogs, Kids, and Property Lines because that was, the hottest topics he ever had to deal with. So I'm a bird dog guy, like your husband is, Andrea, and have raised, trained and hunted bird dogs for 14 years. Over those 14 years, I've been to a lot of national trainers in their facilities and that type of deal. I think this resolution is very well written. I think all of it, I understand completely. You're adding a lot of clarification to the rules and regulations. I have one issue with plastic barrels. That's a very common practice that I've seen with guys that quite honestly make a living out of this. With that, usually when plastic barrels are used, there's a shade structure that provides shade. They have, only one opening that has proper bedding. From an insulation perspective, there's no difference between a plastic or a vinyl siding or a piece of, whatever. Uninsulated is uninsulated. But I kind of want to have an open discussion just to see if you're good with it, but I would like to strike plastic barrels and undo the red line with the exception calling out plastic barrels and just define out that plastic barrels are exceptional or are appropriate for, with the additional shade, bedding, that type of deal. Thoughts? And so if you look at the red line version, section J, second and third paragraph. Second paragraph, what I'm wanting to do is strike or plastic from that. I'd like to undo the red line of the exception and then designate it actually as plastic barrels.
I would like for the record to show that my hunting dogs do not sleep in plastic barrels. They sleep in my bed mostly.
Neither do mine.
But, I would like for Lisa to weigh in, but I will just say in terms of if we're going to, for sure I cannot abide with metal barrels. I think hopefully everybody can understand why. If we are going to allow plastic barrels, I would like some very defined structure around what that looks like, because one person's plastic barrel laying on the ground where water can roll in versus some of the ones that I know that are up elevated and on stands and whatnot. There's a vast difference between that. I also think there's a big difference between a barrel that is under a shade and then sitting out in the baking sun. So I do think if we're going to strike that, we need to definitely put some parameters around that. And the reason that I want parameters is so that, not only protection for the dog that has to live in the barrel, but also for the officer who's going up to the residence. So if one officer rolls up and sees a plastic barrel and knows that it's okay in the ordinance, they may not notice that there's, rain running into the barrel, whereas the other officer may come up and say, oh, well, this isn't sufficient. So if it's spelled out very directly, then we don't have to have a subjective view of whether or not this is okay, or, we can spell out for them exactly. And that way also the residents can look at their barrel and say, okay, this meets the requirement, or no, it doesn't, so that if they do encounter an animal control officer, they can very clearly look on our website or look at the ordinance and see whether or not they're in compliance. Okay. See, this is why Lisa's here.
Good evening. If I may speak to that, Commissioner Williams, because I think there's just a very easy way to accomplish without a whole lot of wordsmithing what you're looking for, because what I hear you saying, if I'm not mistaken, is you don't have an issue with making sure that there's appropriate enclosure, making sure there's appropriate bedding, all of those appropriate insulation. If you were to just omit the words plastic barrels from that language and add a sentence at the end of that paragraph that said plastic barrels may be permitted so long as the other provisions of this section are met, that would then include the appropriate bedding, the appropriate insulation raised off the ground enough to keep the weather out, and all of those things. But it would be clear that those things apply to the plastic barrels, and I think that would take care of Andrea's concerns as well.
I'm comfortable with that. I just want to make sure that plastic barrel, because I just see it's a very common practice with national trainers that they have these 55-gallon kind of food-grade plastic barrels. They're elevated off the ground, they're fixed. There's limited exposure to the elements with a small opening. There's bedding in there, and they got a shade structure on top of it. And, if it's that common with guys that make a living out of it, I don't necessarily want to strike it out. So, thank you.
Making a motion to amend?
I can make a motion then to amend. So, I guess without failing to regurgitate what Lisa just said.
What she said.
Basically, what Ms. Carson suggested as an amendment, where it strikes barrels, but adds the language around barrels meeting the other necessary language.
And it would strike plastic
Correct.
We have a proper motion and a second. Now, with those who have requested to speak, we need to know if you want to speak to the amendment or to the original resolution. So, Commissioner Mason?
No, Attorney Carson addressed my exact issue.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to the amendment? Has the amendment been loaded? Okay, we'll give her a moment.
As a caption,
That need to be the exact wording, or is that
just the caption.
I think it summarizes it.
Okay, we have a proper motion to amend, and it's been seconded, and it is now loaded. One last call for any questions on the amendment. Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor, press your yes button. Any opposed, your no. Again, we are voting on the amendment. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Now we're back to the original resolution as amended. Any questions on the original resolution as amended? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Okay. Waiting for it to be reloaded. We are ready to vote? Okay, we're ready to vote. If you're in favor, signify by pressing your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change their vote, please do so at this time. Record the vote, please, Mr. Whitby.
24 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. I'd like to thank all department heads for coming out tonight, and again, thank the sheriff and the sheriff's deputies for being here through the duration of the meeting. Is there any other business to come before this commission meeting tonight? We have a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. Commissioner Hester.
I'd like to thank the Highway Commissions. I think Greg Bowl might still be here. They did a great job. You know, we haven't been here since November. During the snow, the cold, it was horrible. They put out tons of salt. Also, I'd also like to remind people that in December, we got a letter from the Tennessee Ethics Financial Board. In December, it scared me, as it does every year. But then I read it, and it's not due till January. If you try to do it in December, it'll chuck the whole thing out. So you might want to do that. Thank you.
Any other business to come before the commission? We are adjourned.
Our rules specify.